Hello again, I'm Daniel Sullivan, and this is a profile of the course content that you're going to engage over the next 7 weeks as you work your way through BUAD 848, Globalization, Issues, Actors, Decisions, and You. To do so, I'm going to help you get started a bit more effectively, I think, given my experience teaching the class thus far. I'm going to give you a profile of what's going to happen in this class over the course of the 7 weeks regarding the content you're going to engage and how you're going to try to interpret and make sense of it. So again, we have this chart which profiles the course portfolio of IB globalization classes here at University of Delaware, and specifically the Lerner College. Earlier preceding video highlighted the macro to micro orientation outlook that shapes how we've configured this particular portfolio for you. Likewise, we showcased the issue of that there's a very large 30,000 foot view of the world, as well as a very individualized centric perspective of the world. So think of this more appropriately. The world's population is about 7.7 billion people, and that 7.7 billion people cluster is caught up in that globe you see up on the upper left-hand corner. There are also 7.7 billion individuals, and you are one of them, as am I, and as are your classmates. And we're making the presumption here that somewhere in that zone, from the 7.7 billion people who populate the world, down to the one person that you happen to be, there's a context called globalization. And that context creates basically issues and agents and decisions for you to wrap yourself around and make sense of, and ideally optimize your professional choices and your personal path. Okay, how do we do this relies on kind of an interesting blend of content. So let me give you a quick backdrop. If this class was BUAD 811 and it was looking at the international business environment and looking at globalization from a big picture point of perspective, we would have a pretty straightforward set of content. What you see here is a leading textbook in international business. I happen to be the co-author on it. It's been around now for a good 30, 40 years. I've been involved with it the past 19 years. And it's now heading into the 17th edition. It has two critical dimensions. It has environments and operations. The environment section, as you see on the right-hand side, is defined by 10 chapters that looks at things such as legal, economic, political, cultural, trade, monetary dimensions of the international business environment that help define this notion called globalization. So if this class was looking at a big picture idea of globalization, material would be straightforward. We would jump on this and off you go. Okay. If we were looking at the operational focus of this class, that is the international marketing management, leading across boundaries, even international business management, we would have a very defined set of curriculum and content to process to help you get ready to go into the world. That would be basically as the book we show here lays itself out. It would be chapters 11 through 20. So chapters 1 through 10 looks at the environment of globalization. Chapters 11 through 20 look at the ideas that shape and define operating in that global business environment. Now we look at things such as strategy, country evaluation, export-import, marketing globally, international finance, accounting, and HRM. But to wrap it up, again, if you are thinking about what's going to happen in this class and how we're going to shape it, we would basically look at this dimension in terms of international business. Big textbook covers those 4 core courses pretty well. The last course is difficult because right now there's no book out there that speaks to that issue. I'm working on one that might come out in the next 2 years or so. It's kind of a tough struggle right now, but I'll figure it out somehow, some way. But the critical part that makes it challenging is that it's very individualized. Again, think about it. It's basically the globalization and you dynamic that we're engaging in this course. And there's really no specific book that I can specify that will speak to each of your own particular interests in a way that is individually centric, that would relate to you in a very direct way. Think of, for example, just the career choices that in this class probably run the gamut. So for example, here are different career choices that I just put together, and it's just a very small sample of a very big universe of choices that you can consider making to position yourself to maximize your success and prosperity in this world. Some of you may wish to be an entrepreneur. Some of you may wish to be a think tank policy analyst. Some of you might be aiming to work for a large multinational corporation. Some of you might want to be an academic enterprise player, such as Director of Global Studies, faculty member, even possibly support personnel that guides international study abroad. Some of you might want to work for a supranational organization, such as the United Nations, the World Bank, or the IMF, and so on and so on. I don't know what you wish to do, and I respect your choices, obviously, but I don't know how to take into consideration when I have, say, 25 students and I have 25 different career choices, how to build a course to communicate the importance of those topics to each individual in a very unique, relevant sort of way. So consequently, this is the dilemma for the course. This class has a variety of perspectives, it has a variety of ambitions, and it has a variety of expectations. My job, as I see it, is to give you the platform to make it all work, both in an academically rigorous, theoretically meaningful, but practically useful way for you. How do we do that? Well, we begin with this. This is the chart that maps out the topics and the themes and the flow and the sequence for this course. Again, the critical unit of analysis for this course is the notion of you. And so consequently, what we've chosen to do in this class is to map out the catalysts, the consequences, the perspective, the context, and the choices that regulate your interpretation of your positioning in the global business environment. Now, how do we do so? As you see here on the top side, we have 5 dimensions: catalyst, consequences, all the way through choice. We operationalize those ideas to a very interesting sort of way. At least I think it's interesting, and it's been something I've been working on for several years now. We filter them all through your perspective. So I'm going to provide to you a wide variety of choice of information to interpret. And it'll be your perspective that you bring to bear about what you choose to specifically engage, and how, even more importantly, how you specifically choose to interpret that information. Okay? So I'm going to give you, and I'm not trying to say in a very munificent sort of way that I'm going to give you anything, but I'm going to provide you a variety of resources, actually a lot of resources. And there'll be a lot of individual choice in that resource set to choose what you wish to work on and how you wish to interpret it. And within that context, you're going to develop an understanding of that particular topic dimension that shapes your interpretation, given your individual perspective of what globalization means to you. So we have our first dimensionality here. We begin by looking at megatrends, big ideas that shape the way the world's going to work, whether it be artificial intelligence, regional integration, or the latest globalization initiative to integrate countries more directly, or arguably disintegrate countries more directly. Those are big trends that shape what we choose to do. They're a catalyst for how things unfold going forward. So we start off with megatrends. We then look at the future of work in terms of the workplace of the future. Workplace in any sort of way, and any way you wish to define it, it's being radically redefined by a variety of technologies that make, for the first time ever in the history of humanity, immediate access to interaction and information. Theoretically and practically, you can be anywhere you wish to be in the world in the next 3 seconds. If you click a button, bang, there you go, off you are, and you could be from wherever you are now to wherever you wish to be in a matter of seconds. So basically, you have the power of the gods in many ways, what would have considered the power of the gods a generation or millennium ago, to be in 2 different places at the same time. And that is mind-boggling. That ultimately, by definition, is going to reconfigure how we conceptualize the nature of work, and then how we actually map the workplace, and how we will actually, you and I, work in that radically different workplace. So a simple way for me to think about it is basically, the internet, whatever it touches, it transforms. And the internet has thoroughly touched the notion of work. And consequently, we now have access, immediate access, to information of endless variety, and we have immediate access to endless interactions. And those 2 things, those 2 dimensions within the context of the transformational technology that's going on in the world, shapes how we all play the game. So that's the workplace of the future. Once you master that material, you'll move on to, well, what does that mean to me? And so you're going to emphasize a dimensionality called knowledge, skills, and abilities for the future, or what are called more commonly KSAs. K for knowledge, S for skills, and then A for abilities. They are changing dramatically. Again, if you have immediate access to information interactions, they're going to require a different set of skills, a different type of knowledge and a different structure of abilities to master and do well in that context. So therefore, you're going to start off this class in the first couple of weeks looking at catalysts that emphasize the idea of megatrends, the workplace of the future, as well as KSA's four-year future. The critical, the variable will be you're going to make sense of that situation within the context of what's called the fourth industrial revolution. Okay? It's a common term that you're going to become quite fluent with. You might think there's only been one so far back in the 1800s when we went from agrarian to mechanical power, but there's actually been a couple. One involved electrification, one involved computer technology. Right now we're entering a phase of cyber-physical integration that's going to reset the nature of what we think of regarding work and even arguably humanity. But anyways, the context that you're going to figure out within is the consequence of megatrends, workplace dynamics, and KSAs for your future within the context of the fourth industrial revolution. That will therefore then lead into your perspective. You're going to be asked, as opposed to me telling you, how you're going to interpret that information. So that's you again in the center of the place. Once we're at that point in the course, we then shift to the next part of the class, which is the context of how you make sense of the world. And there really are two ways. There's the conventional way, which looks at the issue of terrestrial globalization, the traditional borders and boundaries that define nations across the world. They create linguistic structures, economic patterns, market activities, political dynamics, legal codes that differ from country to country or from region to region, and they shape what you choose to do. Working terrestrially is what we've been doing for the past, 3 or 4 millenniums, possibly, maybe 5. And that's what we all kind of think of when we think of globalization. A terrestrial phenomenon where we go from country X to country Y, and in between that transaction we make sense of the world. We try to find ways to position ourselves to do that and make that happen well. But again, go back to the earlier dimensions, internet, information access, interaction, availability, and the dynamic called the fourth industrial revolution. That's unleashed a wave of transformation that results in basically what's called the digital globalization effect. The map you see there, which looks like a brain kind of going crazy in some kind of circular or structural way, is actually a map of the internet. They take a packet of information, send it along its way, map out where it goes, and then try to configure the map based upon that path of interactions and travel. But anyways, that's digital globalization. That would be Amazon, for example. That would be Google. That would be Baidu. That would be Tencent. That would be onward and onward, whatever one you want to throw out there for consideration. That is a big deal, as you're all familiar with, and that is increasingly, as you'll see in the course of this class, probably the determinant of globalization's direction from this point onward. It's a big deal, has big implications, and has big consequences. So you'll be asked to engage the ideas of megatrends, et cetera, from your perspective within the context of terrestrial globalization and the notion of digital globalization. And then once you're at that point, you're going to be able to relate those ideas to your own personal career choice. And that's really what we're getting to in this class, is you're being asked to identify, specify, clarify, challenge, and confirm your professional path within the context created by that rather dramatic, somewhat messy chart you see on the screen behind my little tiny head. And hopefully, by testing your presumption of a professional path and personal ambition, you'll be able to test it in a way that reflects what's going on in the world and helps you, therefore, come up with a plan to make sense of globalization and what it means to you more directly. Likewise, think of it this way. This is the catalyst for the course, those three broad dimensions. They feed into the idea of consequences as we look at them in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. You then are going to contextualize your interpretation based upon a terrestrial and a digital interpretation, and that shape will basically be a function of your career choice. And within it all, each dimension, each aspect, each element you'll be asked to identify, what does it mean to you? And how do I make sense of that? What do I do with that sense that I make sense of? And therefore, that's the content for the course. But you're probably thinking, and there'll be a video profile in the next iteration, next module, I think, that'll speak to this much more directly. how will you do this? And to do that is what you're going to do is you're going to basically work on what's called the Vimosa. Okay, so as you see here, let me get out of this shot. You're going to work on a document called your Vimosa. Vimosa stands for Vision, Mission, Objective, Strategy, and Action Plan. And you're going to develop a template. The template's already been specified. You're going to complete a template that will enable you to translate your interpretation of the catalysts and consequences and context and choice from your perspective into your own personalized vision, mission, objectives, strategy, and action plan statement. It's a really cool opportunity in my estimation. I've run it now a few times and people seem to think it's a big deal that makes sense of the world far more impressively than they otherwise could. It's also a way, quite critically, and I want to emphasize this, it's a way for you to utterly personalize the experience. So at the end of this class, once you complete your Vimosa, you'll have a remarkably cool, compelling, powerful profile of what you're going to do to position yourself within the context of this thing called globalization. Okay, so therefore, that's how we make it individual. We let you process all that information you see above into your own personalized Vimosa specification. And by doing so, you'll master two skills that are really quite critical in my estimation. One is you'll understand how to interpret a lot of information a lot of different ways. You'll also develop a sensitivity to how a corporation or an individual like yourself would be able to run a Vimosa profile that enables you to translate information that looks very abstract, very remote, into a very personalized interpretation of what you will do. So there it again. Vision, mission, objective, strategy, action plan. And that's what you're going to do in this class. So with that said, that's the content for this course. It's been designed to help you pick and choose from a variety of resources that have been provided and identified for you a way to interpret the idea of globalization, the issues that define it, actors who play in it, the decisions presented to you, and what you will do to optimize your professional path and personal ambitions. So on that happy note, thanks to you again for being here, and I hope this provides a pretty good overview and gets you going faster and more expeditiously on the course beginning now. Thank you guys.